Fox News alert and the U.S. issuing new sanctions against North Korea. These pretty tough ones, aimed at two officials tied to dictator Kim Jong-un's ballistic missile program. Now, this move followed new United Nations sanctions announced last Friday. Meantime, though, South Korea is predicting North Korea would actually look into open negotiations with the U.S. next year, even as Seoul continues preparing for a nuclear threat from the north. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott is live with the latest. This is almost hard to believe, too good to be true. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here, Julie.
Yeah.
We'll try to sort them out for you. First, as you noted, new moves against North Korea. These coming from the Treasury Department just yesterday. Sanctions, largely symbolic, but still important sanctions against two of the top aides to Kim Jong-un tied to the banned missile program. This came just after the UN Security Council's sanctions last Friday. Strong stuff against North Korea. North Korea, by the way, branded them an act of war. And it also comes amid talk from an important South Korean government agency that, yes, perhaps North Korea could talk with the United States about its missile and nuclear programs in 2018. But at the same time, as you also noted, they were preparing an anti-nuclear unit for the government to fend off any kind of actions from North Korea. Also, there are no real indications either from North Korea or the United States that negotiations are in the offing. Another important development, though, we have to tell you about, Julie, in the past day or so, doctors in South Korea examining one of those defectors from the North Korean military came to South Korea in recent weeks have found to have anthrax antibodies within their bodies that could indicate that that soldier and maybe others are vaccinated against that deadly biological weapon. Means they could be handling them. There are a lot of concerns. There could be storehouses of chemical and biological weapons in North Korea. Remember, in this past year, we saw that VX attack, apparently by North Korea, against the estranged brother of Kim Jong-un. A lot of danger out there, a lot of concerns going into the new year. Back to you, Julie.
Greg Palcott, thank you so much. And for more on all of this, let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, former Green Beret commander and former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Cheney. He's also a Fox News contributor and the author of Warrior Diplomat. Thank you very much for talking to us. South Korea predicting that North Korea is actually going to come to the negotiating table. I mean, when I read that this morning, I was like, what? I mean, it would make anybody skeptical. The question is it a real possibility?
Well, I do think it's a real possibility. We've seen this behavior from North Korea before when pressure is ratcheted up over time. Then, they'll essentially go back to the negotiating table. But we've seen time after time again from the 1990s under Clinton to, I was very close to the six-party talks under Bush from when I served with the vice president to they essentially use those talks to buy time to continue to develop their program both on the nuclear side and on the ballistic missile side and have just marched forward to having a fully operational program that can attack anywhere in the world. And they are on the cusp of having that capability right now. So I'm with Prime Minister Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, on this, who's very tough and said at the UN Security Council, having dialogue just for the sake of dialogue is meaningless. Right now is the time for maximum pressure. You're
right. Talk is cheap. I mean, and China, regarding China, okay, and Russia joining in these new sanctions. So China's basically cutting off all oil exports to Pyongyang, and words of talks have escalated since all of this. This isn't the first time, and this is why one must be skeptical because, in the past, circumstances have forced the North to talk. It was all that talk. Are we seeing more of that, more of the same with North Korea? And in the past, by the way, China never held up their end of the bargain.
That's right.
They said that they were going to cut off North Korea. They said that they were going to uphold sanctions. But in the end, they flopped.
Well, again, as you just said, talk's cheap. And we've seen time and time again, we've seen both China and Russia agree publicly, as they just did on in the UN Security Council, to sanctions. But the key here is enforcement. Now, importantly, China just released some of its import-export numbers, and they're claiming, if you believe the numbers, that they've cut off all oil, all natural gas, and a lot of the kind of foodstuffs that North Korea needs in the month of November, and that they're going to continue that going forward. That may be this kind of precursor that South Korea is seeing that thinks and they're predicting North Korea will come to the table. But the proof is in the pudding here. We have to see China continue to ratchet up the pressure, and we have to verify through our own means that they are cutting North Korea off economically.
So is diplomacy then still our best option to deal with the rogue regime?
Well, listen, a military option, if you buy into the notion that North Korea is not a rational actor and therefore we cannot let them have their finger on the nuclear button, then you also have to buy into the notion that he would react irrationally to any type of strike, and war on the peninsula will be absolutely devastating. You are guaranteeing tens of thousands of Korean deaths, if not more. So we have to exhaust everything, cyber, economic, diplomatic pressure beforehand, but we have to keep up the pressure, and we can't let North Korea just buy time by coming back to the negotiating table.
What's scary about all of this is, again, we have been down this road before, but this is a much scarier road because unlike in years past, you know, North Korea is very close, if not already, has an intercontinental ballistic missile. I mean, we don't know. They may have it, capable of carrying a nuclear warhead in its arsenal. I mean, so we don't have time for these talks to fail. My question to you is, at what point does the president turn to his military advisors and make the decision that it's time to take military action?
Well, that's going to be, that is the critical question from a policy standpoint as we see them marching towards full operating capability, where we have to look to our intelligence community and get the best intelligence that we have on, you know, how do we stop them just short. And we give every other option a chance, you know, economic, diplomatic, and otherwise, before they get to that option. But if the policy is we cannot live with a North Korea, and I think it's a right policy, that is capable of striking the United States with an ICBM, then at that point we would have to take military action. And keep in mind, our ground-based missile defense in California and in Alaska is only about 50% effective, and that 50% is often, the tests are highly scripted, by the way. I'm not willing to roll the dice on an American city, and I don't think this president is either.
No, he's not. Michael Waltz, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Meantime, Democrats are heading into the new year pretty optimistic that 2018 will be the year